that the Stargate gets booted up for both players. They have the pylon blocks, but it's so important to try to have that probe around and delay this base, but you need to also try to be aware of what the follow-up's going to be. And Zest going for the cybernetics core block on top of it, saying, Neeb, why don't you just one base all in me, bro? Yeah. Just do it.
But the other interesting thing is always the Stargate. What do they open up with the Stargate? There's been a weird kind of turn of events amongst, I think, the pro discussion about how that Stargate versus Stargate can work out, where weirdly enough, the Oracle seems so counterable by Phoenix, and it seems so scoutable as well, because you can see what's coming out of the Stargate. But then, because the Oracle is such a massive threat, we do still see people actually try and go for the Oracle. Then there's also the additional kind of Void Ray rush across the map that, Max Packs really like, so usually brings over shield batteries. And then if everything has been done, everything's been tired out, and it ends up being Phoenix, then we get into good old-fashioned Phoenix Wars.
Oh boy.
And Neeb is doubling down on this. Last time I saw him double down on the Phoenix Wars, he did get into a very good position against the other Protoss, because the Protoss it was facing tried to transition into Blink Stalkers, but then he proceeded to not do anything with the Phoenix, and I think that game might actually be like on the forefront of his mind here. He's got to be very careful to understand what Zest is going for, and then actually use this significant Phoenix number advantage to actually do a lot of damage.
Yeah, because if you try to switch off of the Phoenix, then the opponent has more than you by a huge amount. They just run and kill all of your Phoenix, and then you can never leave your base, right? They'll just be going around, picking up all your probes. When you have 12 or 13 Phoenix, you're not exactly worried about flying over a cannon to kill a whole mineral line in 2 seconds. So I mean, it's an arms race. The Fleet Bacon is coming in for Zest a little bit earlier than Neeb, and that means we'll be having the Anion Pulse Crystals for the Phoenix range.
Now, because they're both getting Anion Pulse Crystals so close together, it's not really worth discussing what could have happened. But one of the things that could have happened for Neeb is that if he had at least gotten into range, you don't get out of range. But again, we don't have to discuss that. We're moving on already. They both have Anion Pulse Crystals, and actually Neeb is going into a carrier very quickly. You have to be careful about this. That's a big investment. It takes a long time. No one has any upgrades. It's funny, actually.
I guess if the interceptors are able to mess with the AI at all, it can really help Neeb snowball a fight quickly. But with Zest getting his own third Stargate and now going into carriers too, I guess it's the Golden Armada rush versus the Golden Armada rush?
Yeah. If Neeb had invested and Zest hadn't, then Zest might have had one little power spike with a number of Phoenix correctly target firing does maybe overwhelm. But when you also consider that, it's not like your opponent doesn't have any Phoenix at all, you're dealing with shield battery overcharge still. Like the next step of this is, kind of stalemating and then going into the actual mass late game with all the capital ships. And then I really love the capital ship PvP because it's a bit of a game of rock, paper, scissors with how Carrier Tempest Void Ray works, which I'll get into when we actually see some differences. But right now it is just about the carriers for both of them. Actually, Neeb goes back on a Phoenix.
So I really think his plan is to just try and focus on target firing with his Phoenix and having the carriers as a distraction. The +1 does get started up for Zest. He sees the carriers as this pylon gets destroyed, but he's not going to have that upgrade in time for this fight. And the Sentry is perhaps the most important piece of this puzzle, a Guardian Shield to mess with the double shot of those Phoenix, and of course the Interceptors could have a huge impact. So he pops it, but with the batteries right there, maybe he's feeling a little hesitant towards forcing the fight.
I just brought this up. I was surprised that Neeb was doing what he was doing. That would have been... If he had won, too, I would have been so impressed, because to even practice the situation is so rare. And you can't just tell someone to do it, because it's not really genuine practice. So, yeah, I like the pullback. I do. I think that would have been an overcommittal over shield batteries, over who knows what else is popping in reinforcements for Zest faster than Neeb. But, again, stalemating out, like I'm sure...
Can we see the units tab? What ended up with the Phoenix count when Neeb went back in? So he's just got a minor lead in the Phoenix count, but a couple of extra carriers can go a long way for Zest, especially with him going for the +1 a little bit earlier. I still never was quite sure how much Neeb was willing to invest towards that himself, but comes over, he's going to grab some of the probes mining the gold resources. I think the gas is the big factor right now when you're trying to build these types of armies. But with that Phoenix Count lead, being able to force a fight here could end up turning really nicely for him. That +1 is so close for Zest, but not quite ready yet.
That would have been a very fun fight to watch. Basically, the increased number of Phoenix for Neeb probably would not overcome the effective +1 air on the slightly lower number of Phoenix from Zest, but
it's 14-8 though. But yeah, now I think the +1 would have obliterated him if he had taken that fight 10 seconds later. And it could still be quite dangerous to force it here. Baiting out a few interceptors is nice. Take some money. Steal a few pennies from your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, we have Neeb going for an upgrade as well. We may even see some shield upgrades up. Speak of the devil, we have a shield upgrade on the way for Neeb. It is just going to get down to, eventually everyone's going to have maxed out capital ships. So mass carrier seems to be the most, not to discredit it, but a bit, more of the aim move situation. You do have to focus fire carriers instead of letting the interceptors just kill each other, I suppose. But then you can eventually get into the Tempest game, and the Tempest outrange the carriers quite a bit. But if the Tempest ever get in range, then Tempest are very fragile units. Then we have some people try to add in Void Rays with Flux Veins, which then get really good at just pouncing on a capital ship army, and they do obliterate those armies very quickly with their prismatic alignment. So it can be, I feel like it's still an emerging, developing situation, because again, it's so not practiced. But both of them sticking to the carriers for the next 40 supply by the looks of things, and it was Neeb who started. Oh, she finished. There you go. Gave some other ship first.
All right. Well, and that +2 is still going to be a little bit ahead for Zest. He's got a lead in that carrier count. But one of the things, I guess, for Neeb in terms of the way that this one's gone is with that Phoenix count advantage that we were discussing earlier, they're mostly off the table for Zest. So still having a lot of Phoenix gives you a lot of power against the carriers. As they're going to do a ton of damage to the interceptors, and the mothership obfuscates any type of control or micro that you're going to try to do. It also gives you an opportunity to use that new emote I know they added with the -400 400 for those of you subbed in the chat.
Actually, were some pretty fun emotes, to be honest.
I really like the cursed Pog worker emotes. They terrify me. Yeah. I'm gonna have nightmares about those.
Yeah. Even when they both get maxed out, guys, it's still going to be really difficult to actually see an engagement, because while maybe they'll find their opponent on an upgrade deficit and they'll say, okay, that's the time to pull the trigger, fair enough. Again, counting on a predictable outcome in such a rare, unpredictable matchup of mass air versus mass air directly to it as well, it's going to be difficult for both players. I don't think either one is really truly confident. They might just say, okay, I'm maxed out, I get upgrades, I think I'll go for it, and I got to make sure that I'm 100% when I'm 100%. But overall, I'm not really certain that there's they're both looking at it and saying, oh, if I get to this point, then I will definitely win, because it's been such an even game, and just capital ships, all those interceptors flying around can make these battles look really weird and last a really long time.
Yeah, I'm still a big fan of Neeb's setup, but the carrier count for Zest is getting terrifying, and his focus on the upgrades a little bit earlier, especially just having that +3 attack so much faster than Neeb is going to make a carrier versus carrier engagement brutal. He trades out a lot of the Phoenix because he's just going to go Giga Carrier at the same time.
Giga Carrier, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is potentially that perfect timing. Gonna have +3 so far ahead of Neeb, but if he clicks on it and realizes it, then that's absolutely the time to go. And there's no other complication here. Neeb doesn't have a different composition that might throw a wrench into things. It would really just be about the upgrades.
Yeah, I guess the armor upgrades that Zest hasn't gotten at all kind of does mitigate that a little bit. Wow, they're both attacking the rocks. Okay, so time warp on the carriers, time warp on the other carriers. Mothership is dead. There is a photon cannon contributing to this, and perhaps the least castable battle of Starcraft 2 that we've had at the EPT in front of us, as we watch a giant swarm of locusts attempt to rip apart the shell hosts of another swarm, and Neeb is taking this fight decisively. Whatever it was tipping the scales, he's gotten it done. Neeb